So this is going to be a little bit of a dated video because there's something really interesting going on. And there's a debate, and of course, it would surface now on Christmas and the role of Christmas in the lives of a returning Ephraimite, the prodigal son. If you have a level of understanding about the two houses and about Christianity is this concept of the fulfilled prophecies of Yeshua going after the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, aka Ephraim, coming back, then this is going to have a lot of meaning to you, because this is a hot button item right now, is where do we fall out? How do we practice Christian today in this culture? Okay, on many, many levels, because it's, the end of the age, there's a lot of chaos out there. But I want to say that there is a way, and the whole goal of understanding scripture, especially on its deepest levels, is to bring peace, to bring harmony, to synthesize what could be seemingly contradictory concepts, which has tripped people up studying the Bible for millennia. But there is a formula in the Tree of Life. I teach from the Tree of Life, which is also known as this concept of parts. How do you rightly divide the word? Lo and behold, Christian, there's a whole way to do it that the Torah sages have known for thousands of years, that unfortunately Ephraim has lost this deep level of biblical exegesis. But be that as it may, there is a whole correction going on as the Father is bringing his children back to the high mountain of Torah that they were at Mount Sinai, which also implied a very high level of understanding, way above the nations. We have to understand this. Okay, so we're on a journey home, but then again, so are a lot of people. But, you're responsible for what you know. So what do we know, and how are we supposed to find this balance between theory and practice, between right doctrine and between how we live it out? How do our mitos? How is our character? How are our actions? And where are we supposed to think? Where are we supposed to fall out? So we have a correct body, soul, and spirit theology that pleases Yahweh. We want to please Yahweh. I would imagine that would be the goal. So Christmas is, by all means, and you might as well know where I said, it really has roots in paganism. Now, you cannot in any way, shape, or form. And this is where you have to really be aware of, the message. The medium is the message, controlling the narrative. There's scrubbing going on even today to make the Christian, and I believe this is sort of the Chrislam theory, that spirit that's out there in the world. Let's see if we can synergize some of these things so we can have a little more peace, a little more harmony. Okay, but unfortunately, if it's not done according to what's already been laid out in Scripture, according to the middle pillar, according to this balance that's built into Torah, it's something we have to invent or make up. We just have to learn how to do it, apply ourselves to wisdom. But be that as it may, what's going on right now is, to me, is a really interesting debate about this, because, but let me just say, I'll give you a couple of proof texts that say that the whole concept of Christmas is a replacement. There's a lot of teachings out there that have been going on that are very, in my opinion, very Hellenized. See, and especially coming off of Maccabees, coming off of Hanukkah, okay, which is really what we're celebrating in the winter, okay? The dedication of the temple, the tabernacle, okay? That's what we're celebrating in these winter months. That's the festival, that's the feast, okay? The question is, how does all these concepts of a birth of Messiah now get fit in? How did it get connected to this winter feast, coming off of Sukkot in the fall and right into? And, a little due diligence, you can figure this out. But the point is, there is a festival on the 25th of the month in the winter, and it starts on Kislev. It's actually Kislev 25th is the feast of the beginning, the feast of dedication, the feast of Hanukkah. The word is used actually in, let's just see here, I believe it's in John, let's see, where would it be? Oh, I have a verse here that actually uses it as the word Hanukkah in Yeshua. Actually, it is in John 10:22, where Yeshua is in the temple during the feast of the dedication, the time of, this is a feast that has been going on in Israel for 1,100 years, a tradition. And believe me, tradition has a very positive application in Torah, where we are handed down things, okay, from our elders, from our sages, from our, our patriarchs, from those who keep track of and write the Torah from us, from our prophets, okay? Very specific line of tradition. How do you act out? What are your mitos and what are your actions doing these things? And that when they dedicated the the tabernacle the first time in the wilderness, they can find it when Ezra rededicates the temple at the same time, and Yeshua is in the temple during this feast. And the feast is actually, what it signifies is a winter feast, is the whole point of the power of light over darkness. What other time would, really, why would you celebrate in the summertime when the sun is already so bright? You're going to have such a hard time making that contrast, okay? Do it, because, again, everything is very pictorial in the Hebrew Bible. Do it in the wintertime when the light actually, you could just see it. You get it, how much light can dispel darkness, and a continual light. Okay, that's the miracle that's built into Hanukkah, is that this light has really never gone out. We might not see it sometimes because we get ourselves in such gross darkness, but the Father promises that his light that will never depart the world, in essence, and so it always has. So we have to understand, this is not something new, but this is absolutely Hebraic, that Yeshua, but it's the 25th of Kislev, okay? Not the 25th of December, all right? So this is the subtlety of how he changes the times and the seasons, and he attaches something that's already there and true and established. And it does have to do with this season, but you always get more than you bargained for. But it is absolutely, people have to understand, Christmas today is a completely a product of replacement theology, which is Christians thinking all of a sudden that we're the main stage and that Judah is been cut off in covenant. And it's a very mixed up and garbled understanding, and it's not accurate, and it leads to a lot of anti-Semitism. But the point is, no, we are two houses working out our salvation, and we're coming into a reunification today. All Israel, all 12 tribes in all the earth. Okay. Now, the thing is, so you have this here. I'm going to share a couple of slides here because I always think that it's so much better to share things. Whoopsie. Hold on. I don't think I did that right. One more try. Okay. Here you can see, no, wait a minute, here, there's a calendar. Okay. So, what did I say? The 25th of Kislev. Kislev is over here. Can you see it? It's over here, and it starts out, it's in Tibet. It's right at the border of this, the middle here, between what we would consider to be November and December. So it starts on what would be the 25th of Kislev, which is around towards the end, the middle of November. And then it goes into, for 8 days, usually the beginning of December. Okay, but it always starts in this 25th. Believe me, there's nothing arbitrary about numbers, and I can't, but you have to understand how important gematria is. It makes connections and correspondences. It confirms the word. It is an absolute legitimate witness or sign that confirms the word. So I have to understand, this winter feast was been around since the time of Joshua and the people with Moshe completing the tabernacle, and it represents this whole concept, as above, so below, how things are patterned after the word. And what do we know? The word light. That's one of the main attributes. He is light. He brings light into the world. So this festival was established way before Christians, if they had stayed in the house, so to speak, and not so, because you have to understand history. Now, I've read a lot of the apologetics by the other side, so to speak, saying that Christmas has no pagan roots. But all the articles, it's really funny, and they acknowledge that there is no history, no documentation, any of the writings, church fathers on the Jewish side of celebrating this winter solstice, December 25th, kind of Christmas, birth of Messiah, prior to 300 to 400 years after Messiah. So it's kind of late in the game, but at that point, you understand, Christianity through Constantine now, they're trying to really establish religion and distance themselves from the Hebraic roots. So that's what's going on, and that's the agenda. And if you do the research, it's out there. It's absolutely evident. So that puts it suspect in my mind to begin with, okay? And then it just builds. And from there, you can find tons of apologetics where they just kind of pull out these Christian similarities, okay? Similarities are great, but they're not identical, okay? So that's my first point that I want to make. We have to understand we are not talking about the same biblical holiday. And because we are all Israel, we are supposed to come out, all right, of the pagan nations and their practices in this concept. Babel is a concept of in your mind. When you're confused, but you think you're not confused, you still do, you make up holidays. I mean, everybody likes a holiday, right? And the birth of your Savior. I mean, if that's it makes perfect sense. But again, bringing it back to the tree, always bringing it back, okay? We have evidence and we can weigh it on the right side and the left side, and we can find a balanced theological foundation that we can stand on, okay? Now, one of the things is about what should Ephraim, there's two arguments here. There's theory and practice. There's two things going on. And this is what I was trying to figure out. It's easier to do the fall feast. And believe me, people, you can't. So getting into what problem with the action. So many people, there has been in the Hebrew roots movement and in all people, this is our problem. We say to our brother, Racha, and that's an Aramaic word that Yeshua used when he said, when you dialogue or when you interact with your brother, okay, someone of a like mentality or a like grouping, and you say Raka to them, you just judge yourself, and now you're in quote unquote and you can receive the same kind of hellfire judgment for that wrong thinking per se. Raka is this concept where you speak ill, you dehumanize, you delegitimize, you're just plain mean, you're rude, you're caustic, you're like, there's no excuse for bad behavior and bad speech amongst family members. Anybody who's tried to raise a fairly functional family realizes how you speak to each other has 100% to do with the atmosphere and the successfulness of that family. All right. And again, archetype, it plays out again amongst how we treat ourselves. So somebody can have a view against Christmas, can have the other side of you. They can have it. That's fine. We have to get to the place where Judah did and was able to, and successful in this, that, we have to agree to disagree. But I'm going to just, it's for me in my house, this is the way we're going to figure it out. And this is what I'm going to stand on. So if anybody's interested, because these are weighty matters and, responsible for what you know. So we're going to celebrate, to me, it's better for the elect on the planet today to err on the side of our Hebraic heritage. All right, and to come out from them. Now, it is a process, and in the process, we're all at different places. Some of us are more successful in other parts of this thing than others. And so when you point a finger at your brother, you could be pointing three back at yourself, because there's three areas, that you're not up to speed on. This is a very difficult process we're in. And this is where 1 Corinthians 13, where Paul said trumps everything. You can understand all mysteries, which is I'm talking about here. This is like the level of a mystery. This is a pretty deep, high, sage level understanding, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, used according to the tree of life. But at the same time, if I don't present my material with love and respect, it's worthless. I'm a clanging cymbal. I've done more damage than good. Okay, so just because. And this is something, Ephraim, if we can, because this is a test, if we can nail this one, we can begin to do this, we're getting there, okay? And another thing about Ephraim, you have to understand, it is biblical, the book of Hosea, the prophet. Ephraim has always had a problem with idols. Idols starts in the mind of wrong thinking, of wanting to do your own thing, wanting to play, really wanted to be in the nations, of the nations, do some kind of the nations things, but still kind of keep to where you want. It's a very pick and choose. They have always had a problem with idols. This is a fact. This goes back to Rehoboam and Jeroboam and how it all came down in the division of the two nations. Okay. And they did not want to acquiesce to the spiritual authority, to the word that Judah was given. How can I say, they didn't even want to come down the 3 times a year and do the feast collectively in the Jerusalem temple, which was by that time was part of the tradition. Then it was told by Moshe, 3 times a year you do this, okay? Now, but some of this stuff within the Christmas, quote unquote, Christmas story is some of the deepest hidden Hebraic concepts, lifestyles that absolutely prove in so many ways how Hebraic and how Jewish Yeshua was. Okay, he didn't practice Christmas. He didn't have anything to do with Christmas. So, I mean, why are we doing this? We need to get back into the concept of what the 7 feasts meant, and we need to begin to align ourselves up with these things. To me, Christmas, and especially Easter, what are you going to do with Easter when you're going to do Easter and Passover? I mean, make up your mind, double-minded man. I mean, okay, you know, are you going to do Christmas or are you going to do Hanukkah? That's being double-minded, okay? Now listen, that being said, it's like, it's not easy. Whoever thinks that with family and saved portions and unsaved portions and then the world and the pressures and then you got all the other things that have nothing to do with theology, like the materialism and the greed and the, you know, this push to spend, all these forces coming together, okay? But, you know, again, we can put on the armor of Elohim and we can fight a good fight. But the point is, we're all trying to navigate how do we do this? But you don't do it in one sense by, like it says, getting in bed with your enemies, so to speak. We don't legitimize Christmas, okay? But we have to, in some term, make peace with it, not by becoming Hellenized. And that was the difference. Like all of a sudden, you know, in your mind, rationalizing a way, you can partake of a pagan-rooted holiday, just as long as you connect yourself to, oh, it's about Jesus, and you know, on a totally secular level. You know, there's a way in which you can rationalize everything. We don't need to do that. But at the same time, like I do with Thanksgiving or things, there are ways to do these things in a balanced way where, you know, celebrate it like a cultural holiday. If that's where the people who you are around are in, be with them, love them, eat with them, fellowship with them, as long as they're not, you know, idle or you know, I think there's, but these are our people and we are responsible. So if you can't have a basic level of relationship built on love and giving space, well, now there's some people that can do it much better. And there's a whole crop of people on the planet, which is really exciting, who can raise their kids totally before the church even gets into them on that sense. So, I mean, you know, you understand the spectrum, it's very wide, but you cannot, again, it is out of Babylon, all right? And the winter solstice and this kind of, these are rooted deep in nature worship. I'm sorry, but they are not the festivals, the Moedines, that are the signs that are set with the Hebrew month. I said it's in Kislev. And to that's 1,100 years old, established time frame on the Hebrew calendar. Why would we, okay, you just don't come in arbitrarily and change something like that. Okay, the flip side, so there is a question of what falls in 2 lower categories here. One is your action and one is your mitos, meaning your character. And like I said, Yeshua is totally, if you say Raka to your brother, and listen, these things extend into work. You're trying to figure out the calendar, whether you're trying to figure out the correct name of Yahweh, how do you say that? There's so many different things. There's the feast, which we do. There's a spiritual level, even trying to understand. Let me tell you, everything in the Bible is coded according to this type, what's an acronym? Peshat. There's, I mean, parts. This is what it means to be in the garden, to have such a high level of, that all your thoughts are at a very high level and you're actually receiving from Chokmah and Bina. That's what they, to have that knowledge, to have this high level knowledge of God, so that you can see all the arguments, everything I understand, and you can come up with a right ruling, a middle pillar ruling. All right. But this is why understanding this, but understanding these remezes, these hints, like I said, why the 25th, that's not an arbitrary number that was taken. But you understand, these people that work in this concept of remez, which is a hint, which is where the Bible is alluding to things, there's so many established, absolutely established biblical exegesis ways that most of Ephraim does not even know exist. So we're at a disadvantage. But the elites do, the occultists do, those who are practicing mind control against us do. Okay, so they use, but in this category, this is where you have to understand, this is why the keys of the kingdom have got to be implemented at this category, where it's starting to use archetypes, allegorical language, symbols, the cyclical time hints. Like I said, the 25th of Kislev, it's not an accident, okay? And then the 25th of December, a total different month, but keeping the day. These things are not, these are cyclical time hints. Then they also use, this whole concept of types and shadows. There are two sides. There's the world of light, there's a world of darkness. And when you're looking at one or the other, you have to use the correct way the words are coming down, describing one side or the other side. Okay, so this is the point. This is yin and yang. I don't care what you call it, this idea of there's a thesis, there's an anti, this is the pendulum swing. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper explaining how this ties into the letter Lamed. But these people, then that's just what most people understand as allegory. Then we have this whole area called uses of gematria, uses of notarikan, if I'm saying that like tomorrow, and then emblematic symbols that are used to pass on information. But those three in there, those are huge. And Philo talks about, there's all these rules, the rules of interpretation. This is what the sages and the priests knew. And unfortunately, even we don't even hardly know that's really in there and legit. And that's how you study and figure out the stuff on these deeper levels. So either way, then you have what's called the drash, the moral application. And that's the whole point. We all have family. We all want to bring our loved ones and our churches and our assemblies and our neighborhoods and our world into this higher level of consciousness where, peace on earth, wouldn't that be nice? But that's the role, the Prince of Peace, right? But there is a level of homiletic in it. Again, you would be preaching. See, I don't mind an argument or a preaching or a teaching, a sermon, an exhortation on the level of drash on this subject to tell people constantly, okay, fine. We all have know in part and prophesy in part. We're all trying to put the information together and come up with, for me in my house, okay? This is not a 10 commandment issue, except when it gets into a concept of idolatry, which we'll get into in a second. But this is where that can stay right there. It doesn't need to go, it needs to stay right there because again, you don't want to use your emotions or a considered emotional response to still take the place of this level of the intelligent, the mind, the rational, the law that does not change understanding. Okay, so, but let me just go into what is sort of interested. So if you don't know all these hints and how to ferret them out, okay, and this is what I'm saying, we're still working on these on so many. Kosher eating is just another one. Where to wear seats, where to wear the tefillin. There's just so many areas. But it goes back to this concept of the 913 commandments, okay, which is another word for Mount Sinai, is another way and a whole theology and understanding that how you extract what the law is from this whole concept of the 5 books of Moshe, the Pentateuch. That was the covenant. That was what, these are the rules of engagement, so to speak, for all Israel, this multiplied seed of 12 tribes. At that point, now we're going to go into all the earth and do this work for the Father, okay? But in this 913 commandments, there's many of them that we can't do today, okay? Either Judah or Israel, all right? Because we don't have a temple. We're not in the land. They change according to your gender, your status, whether you're a priest or not. So there's there's a whole thinking in there. Okay, it's not a one size fits all or a one teaching fits all kind of thing. There's many nuances. This is why you have to discern. And there is, when we're coming back in the renewed covenant, like the house of Israel is, and we're coming back into a situation where we don't have a temple still. Okay, I mean, it's one thing to come back and be able to go right into a temple situation and then everything is kind of done for you. We have but that's not what's going on. All right, we have to take these concepts, no matter how you look at it, and to a certain level, spiritualize them. Okay, and so that's especially when you're going to spiritualize something, you have to be able to take your information and weigh it in the spiritual realms. Everything is weighed. This is really nothing more. I just want to show you this here, that a scale, you know, these are that you put a balance here and it's a balance here, and you want to, or a weight here and a weight here, and you want to do it in such a way that you get balance. That's why it's the scales of justice. But so let me go and just, now that I have sort of set this up, you know, okay, so I said, and I just want to say this again, I don't think it's a good idea to approach this subject matter with replacement theology teachings, with a Hellenized teaching, with one that encourages assimilation, one that would do anything to blur the lines between our return into this whole, how do we please Yahweh in this concept of all Israel, and then using lower level readings, lower level rulings and understandings where we don't put together all the different levels that are there. We don't even know they exist. And then using our emotions in the final analysis to make our decree, our halakha decree. But there's something really fascinating in this whole story of Christmas to show you that what we miss out on, which I think is the whole point really of the Remez, of the hint of why some of this stuff is not spelled out clearly with the Father, and he would rather we go through this process. It's really more about the process. But so this is idea of the star. Well, and there's something in the story. In Hebrew, it's called the Megal. Oh, yeah. I think that's gonna. Let me see if this is gonna write a little better. Migal Eder, which is Migdal, M-I-G-D-A-L, Eder, E-D-E-R, okay? It means the tower, okay? Tower of Eder, or towers of the flock, okay? Now, oh man. Towers of the flock. This is just not going to write well. Time to get new markers. But it's hard to see it even there. Now let me go into this slide, okay? This is the letter, obviously the letter Lamed, okay? Now, Lamed has a name in the letters. One of its meanings or code words is the flying tower, okay? And it's the number 12. So there's a couple of things. It's the number 12 as terms of it's gematria. It's 12. Here, I'll just show you. Here's the Lamed. Oh, wait a minute. I was even going to show you. Wait a minute. Oh, it's gematria is 30. All right, this is what I meant to say. 8, 9, 10. It's the 12th letter in the alphabet. And its gematria is 30. Okay, and I'll show you why that's important. Okay, but you can see it right here. If you look at it, the Lamed, its gematria is 30. And it's the 12th letter. Okay, and that means it's right in the middle of, there's 22 letters. Okay, so then you have this Lamed. So it's like right in the middle of the letters. Okay, now when these shepherds, okay, so we're going to go to the Christmas story now. So, you know, I don't want to, there's a lot of, go read the information. If Yeshua was born at Sukkot, or born at the Feast of Dedication, the 25th, however you work it out, okay, and you have to have 9 months from one to the other, basically. Okay, but the point is he is Migdal Eder. One of the things he is our high tower, right? We're to run to him. All right, this concept, this is another one of the allegorical images we get. Well, that is rooted in something very real, and it's called the Levitical shepherds. Okay, this is something we see again when we don't understand Torah on this level. The shepherds who were watching their flock by night, these just weren't Bedouin shepherds just out in some arbitrary field. So again, we're Bethlehem, we're very near Jerusalem, we're in walking distance. There is a place called Ephraim, okay, right outside of Bethlehem. It's actually where Rachel died and was buried. So we know she was buried outside. That's very significant, of Bethlehem, on the way to Jerusalem, okay, and buried there. It has this idea, okay, so it's close enough. It's part of the farmland. Remember that the Levites were given certain farmland areas within the principality, within the geographics of the city of Jerusalem. Okay, they didn't get land like the other people in the nation in different tribal areas. They had this concentration of land, which is really called green belts, which is really amazing, of really intense farming, basically, and going towards the temple use. Okay, so these were Levitical priests, shepherds, who were in charge of the sheep that would be used for a temple service. All of the sheep, the lambs that had to be under 1 year, meaning they had to live outside for 300 to 365 days, however your calendar goes, for 1 year. That was one of the requirements. They had to be taken from without spot or wrinkle. They were watched daily by these shepherds. They were like culled from the flock, and it is let's see. And one of the other things is they wouldn't just be watching their flock all the time. Watching their flock by night, it isn't like you can say, well, they wouldn't be in the fields in December, or they would be in the fields. They were always in the fields. I mean, what shepherd does not check on his flock? Can you imagine David leaving the mountains for a couple of months break to, no, they'd send him back up the mountain in a heartbeat. No, shepherds watch their flock all year in the fields. That's what they do. And there are these high towers all over this area of Bethlehem, and they're called towers of the flock, towers of Adair. And they are these, for the shepherds to get out of weather, if it's inclement weather, that they have a place. But there's also one very special tower that was used strictly for birthing the lambs that would ultimately be for this flock of sheep, specifically being raised and watched over for temple service. And the lamb that would be, quote unquote, the Lamb of God, that would, quote unquote, be sacrificed on Passover every year, and then on particular one given year. Okay, and we see this about Messiah is the Lamb of God. That would have come from this whole Levitical group that did this specific job. So when the angels appeared to the shepherds and said, look, unto you this day a child has been born. Listen, there's a Messiah child has come and been born. First of all, they know the story. These are Levitical priests. This is their modus operandi. This is what they know and believe and wait for and pray for and enact and rehearse in this whole thing. Okay, Messiah, all right? To their level of understanding. So, and they knew where the birthing tower was, this structure. Now, how did Mary and Joseph know that they were part of this? Like, probably to some extent. They probably would have preferred to stay at the inn. I mean, all these hints, these are all hints that can help people go one way or the other with them on this. But the point is, how much did they know? But it doesn't matter. Irregardless, the Father, Hashem, overall, had them situated. So Mary gave birth in the birthing tower that was known as the Megal Adair, which was specifically set aside for the birthing of the flock or of the lamb that would be used in this temple service. Now, you can't make that up. Why would Ephraim want to make that up? Why wouldn't you want to have the full background understanding of the Levitical system and how precise and beautiful his coming was in that situation? They were clean, they were aesthetic. There would have been a birthing group woman, or probably a couple who would be overseeing, or it doesn't even matter, it could be a veterinarian type. Somebody was there, a lot of people who were competent on a physical level of doing this. And he said, you will find them wrapped in swaddling clothing. And we know from swaddling clothing, we do this today. You wrap a baby, give it so that it stimulates the womb. You wrap them up, and see, wrapping wrapping goes against the garments again, and he's wrapped in light and all the garments, deep Kabbalistic understanding in that thing. But what I want to say is, what Ephraim loses if we don't go back to our Hebraic roots, we don't get these deeper understandings, okay? And then we get caught up in the commercialism, or we're worried about all this other stuff that has zero to do with celebrating the light that came into the world in the winter, against a backdrop of great darkness, against this backdrop of the dedication of the temple that had been going on for thousands of years. So now the other thing that's so interesting about this is that Joseph's family, now this is another thing that I think is, you know, and I have looked at this for years, a lot of people have, I'm not saying my understanding, because I understand, a certain understanding, especially with the Dead Sea Scrolls, this plan of salvation, this Mashiach figure shows up a couple times and under different archetypes. We know he's a high priest, but he's also this figure of Joseph. And we get this idea of the shepherd of the sheep. And you also have David, this idea of a king over the flock. So we definitely these overtypes over the flock, so to speak. But there was a spot within Bethlehem, because when you read all these different verses, you come into these little Hebrew words, and when you study them, especially this three-letter root word, Ephraim, okay? E-P, let's see if I can spell it right. It's an aleph, a pei, a resh, and a tav, okay? And it is Ephraim, and it is a word that comes, the same letters in the root word is equated with Ephraim. So you have this Bethlehem, Ephraim, which has the same letters in it, just in addition to a yod, as the word Ephraim. It seems to me, and I read in the literature, and this would make a lot of sense to me, because Yeshua ultimately has to be a one stock birthright, but it has to include into it the high priest of Ephraim, of the northern, from Joshua, from this blood, and from David. But it seems that because listen, for a couple hundred years, the northern kingdom was always coming south. They had to do this to celebrate these festivals. It seems that at some point, some of these northern Ephraimites, Ephathites, bought land outside of Jerusalem. Somehow they acquired a place that when they come down, they had a family clan gathering. Now, that's perfectly logical to me. And through the centuries, it became known as this portion around Bethlehem. They weren't really of the line of David, but they were of the line of Joshua, of Ephraim. But at some point, it says there probably was intermarriage. But these are both holy lines, and these people, if you are tapped in, like, I mean, they're not playing around. If they are coming down for the festivals, if they do have this land, they're invested. They're probably fully observant, fully orthodox, fully in. They're believers, okay? So having this proximity, and then, because he's born in the city of David, to even the prophets, when Herod asks, I think it's, something about the king of the Jews, where will he be born? He asked the priests, he asked the Sanhedrin, and they say, well, in Bethlehem. The scriptures are absolutely clear. But then again, there's verses that call him and say that he comes from this area of Bethlehem, Ephah. So how can that be? Okay, because when you do that. So to me, it's a beautiful way of intertwining, but again, it gets back to the concept of these are a people, they're intertwining themselves on levels, keeping these festivals, keeping this narrative, doing and obeying and keeping on these levels, okay? So I think, again, that's a beautiful thing to see that there is this connection, and why not? So when he comes, and, I don't want to do that in this video, but there is a huge theological understanding between the Son of God and the Son of Man, both titles that Yeshua or Mashiach holds in the scriptures, both Old and New Testaments. He is the shepherd of Israel. There's no doubt about it. but he is also the Melech, Dawid. He is also the king. So how does that happen? Okay, unless you have, but you have to understand these are all, and how they can take actually things that happen out in real time and have the deep levels embedded within them of this, so these mysteries, so to speak. All right. Now, what I want to show you is, so again, one of his portrayals is he is the flying tower. He is the high tower. He is, and why Lamed is centric, like anything, like a tower. Okay, this is what they call. And when you understand how the letters are made up in the let me just say this, and I've done this a little bit. There's an invisible line, so everything like a kaf would always be within these two lines. Oh, I don't know if you guys are ever going to see this, so sorry. But the Lamed goes above. It's the only letter that goes a little bit above the line. It is up into, so in other words, it is connecting into the higher levels, and it is bringing down into this level of the tree of life, which is known as Zeron Pin, which is very specific, has this whole, you can't make it up. It's an ironclad understanding that has been established. So, but the Lamed is drawing from a higher level and bringing down this energy, this light, this understanding, this wisdom. It's a very unique, but here again, can you make it up? It is there's 22 letters. It is the 12th letter. It is right in the middle, right? If you were to string these out, these letters, it's right in the middle, and it does shape like a tower. And the thing about its gematria is 30, okay? It does, its root, okay? So the word has a root meaning, and it's to teach. To the goal of Torah, the whole goal of all of it on all the levels is to teach us and to cause us to have a heart that understands knowledge. Okay, this is the point. Get wisdom, get understanding is the principal thing. Get spiritual light. I mean, I don't know how many different ways you want to say it, but it's to get the true knowledge, the emet, the truth out of the Torah. And it's made up of a vav and a kaf. Okay, so what do we have here? A vav. So okay, the word is made up of a vav and a kaf, which you put together 20, you take the gematria, then the vav and the kaf, it is 26. Now 26 is the same number for Yahweh, Yod He Vav He, which is known as the name, that is the sacred name. You really don't say it's Hashem, they would say Hashem, because it is the holy name of God, but it is a truncated name in the sense of Yod He Vav He is the kind of understanding you say it's that expands out and includes everything. So in other words, if you did a Lamed starting at the very top and you kind of gave its curve and it would come all the way down to the bottom. So it represents from the total top to the very bottom, which is the same thing that Yod He Vav He talks about. And it's on either side, you can see this idea where it spreads out. So it starts like a funnel. That's why I put this other shape. I don't know if you can see this one up here, how the shape of the Lamed. But this one, it is a spiral helix. When you get into literally the metaphysics, how energy flows, it starts at the top and it flows, and it has these outer boundaries in which it can flow out, and then it comes back in, and this is the torus, but in movement, top to bottom. I hope you guys are following me. I mean, everything connects 100%. You can't make these kind of connections up. But anyways, the Lamed is connecting totally the upper worlds and the lower worlds, and going out on either side is the total boundaries. The word 12 is also the word, it's equated with the word boundaries. Okay, so the 12 boundaries of all Israel we know are the 12 tribes, and that's a symbolic number. However that multiplied in all the earth, only the Father knows. When it's all, when the roll is called up yonder, we'll know, so to speak. But it has a limit. The Father's known, right? From the very beginning, who those that are his. So the Lamed is a very important letter. It can totally be, it can be mined, so to speak, in some of its deeper understandings, and it gives us this whole concept of an energy flow or an emanative flow of Yahweh to us all the way. And the fact that the number 26 is the same number for Yahweh. Okay, so these are great, again, proof texts to show that there's a lot of depth in the Torah, and it would never do us any favor to keep trying to mine it with this Christian mindset, because they don't have a Hebraic mindset. Okay, and anybody who's honest, who's gone into, who's had their eyes, you understand that. Okay, so it doesn't help us to compromise. Okay, and say, well, just but at the same time, we all have to, before the Father, Paul is very clear, we all have, depending on our circumstances, levels that we still interface with the nations on this level of getting ourselves purified and up to speed and getting to the goal, which is to the city of Jerusalem. We want to get to the celestial city. We want to live there, in this life as we will in the Olam Haba. But our rules of engagement, you have to do it in love. That's otherwise and you have to do it in truth. And these are two sometimes seemingly antithetical, but not really. So I just want to say there were probably a couple other things I wanted to say on this, this whole idea. I love this of the Begal Eder. And one line I should have put in a little picture all over the fields of Jerusalem, and these little rock like towers and things. So my last point to say, okay, and this is a really deeper subject, and I don't know if I don't want to lose anybody on this one per se, but let's just take on the spruce tree. All right. I mean, traditionally, that's what you bring into your home on Thanksgiving, on Christmas. You decorate the spruce tree. And one of the big things is when Jeremiah is talking about, you'll bring in a tree and you'll decorate and do all this stuff to it, and it becomes the center of your whatever, and you end up worshiping it, and that's not good. Well, that's not good. So we have to figure out, well, what's Isaiah referring to, okay? And so if you go to this concept, okay? Really important to understand how at a Remez level our Torah is written. So I can't say, you just cannot stick with a Peshat level understanding, a literal level, because that hinders your understanding. There's so much more there, and this is what it means to be Berean. You gotta dig. You gotta do Torah. This is one of the main things. This is one of the gifts that Jewish scholarship has given us. It's not for the faint of heart. Okay. Now, many people don't want to be a teacher, and that's fine, and delve into all these different things. That's fine, and you should. You don't have to. We all have a contribution to make. But there is a level of scholarship that's demanded of teachers that's just demanded of them. And the Father does that, and traditionally Jewish sages have done that. But what I want to say is this idea of, if we're practicing something that is really a practice of the nations, which implies it's a practice from the other side, okay? And is decorating a Christmas tree coming from the other side? Like how, okay? And I think it is totally and conclusively based on how the hints are given and how pictographically a symbol tells 1,000 words, a picture tells 1,000 words. So if you and it is to do with the pine cone and the pine tree and what kind of trees they are, and then again what they represent. Okay, now I'm going to try to give the elevator version of this, okay? Because I have done a lot of teaching on this especially on my paid subscription channel, which is, you can go to my website, theelectlife.org, and find the link tree where a lot of these are kept, these deeper teachings. But when there were 2 trees in the garden, this whole story, I'll tell you another amazing and Remez that is true, that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about all this stuff. I told you how the number 26 and it's Yahweh. And of course, I want to tell you how 86, I'm 90% sure it's 86. All right, I'm 90% sure it's 86. Okay. On one sense means Elohim, okay, God. is the gematria of 86 and the word nature. Okay, is the gematria of 86 means there's a complete correspondence. There's a relationship there, and one they're confirming witnesses of truth. Nature. This is our Hebrew. I've said this is always based on nature. That's why nature doesn't lie. That's why you can This is why we're doing ourselves such a disservice by distancing ourselves and our children, our whole lifestyle from nature. Anyways, but in the plant kingdom, which if you're talking about trees in the garden, you are talking in the plant kingdom. And so there are two types of reproductive systems in all of nature amongst the plant kingdom. It's called angiosperms and it's called gymnosperms. And it is all about how the way these two systems reproduce. Okay, now if you know anything about the story of Adam and Eve, and if you get into the deeper in the way the language is coded and stuff, it definitely has a sexual connotation to it. There's no getting around it. Okay, and even the rabbis will go so far as to saying that, you know, this is when the Nakash infused Eve with lust, and you can read that on one level and go, what the heck are they talking about? Okay, but they are, and it's very. But these two systems of reproduction is what we see in the nature, in the animal kingdom, or in the plant kingdom. We're in the plant kingdom here, and explains why a lot of the words are used the way we are. Like when Adam and Eve discovered that they were naked after their incident, whatever. Okay, where it talks about in Genesis, there's fruit trees. There were two trees in the garden. There's fruit trees, and then there's seed-bearing trees. Okay, different when you study it out. An angiosperm is where the seed, the DNA, the nut of that thing, okay, its cell reproductive system is put inside what's called an ovary or a nut. It has a hard outer surface. It's a fruit. A fruit always contains a pit in it. The seed is covered in a hard. So you got apple seeds. You've got, look at an avocado seed. It's always got this big seed in the middle, this fleshy part, and then this outer skin part. That's the whole thing. And it takes two of those to reproduce. This is sexual reproduction. You've got to have a female fruit tree and a male fruit tree. Anybody who's done any, apple tree or any of these kinds of things, you got to have both. Okay. First is something that is gymnosporum, which means that it is scattered seed, and it's not asexual. It's like cloning. So in other words, and the seed is blown about by the wind. There's a whole system of pollination, and it ends up in that parts of flowers get germinated or whatever. But in a lot of flowers or plants, the whole system is within the one. It doesn't take two to come together and to make a third, which is very clear from our Genesis thing. We are angiosperms in terms of, you're going to call us trees. Men are trees of the field. It says that. Okay, so you can carry that analogy. Okay, and then versus we're not gymnosperms. Now I could go on forever and unpack that and the possible ramifications, but in the world, this is how our Torah is coded, so that the left side is coded with coniferous trees, evergreen trees, trees that do not lose their leaves in winter. This is the whole point. These are called gymnosperms, and their seed is what is known, they're called naked seeds, and they reproduce asexually. Okay, they are known really as cloning. Okay, this system, and their symbol of this is always a pine cone. All right, this is some things you have to see this in. These are pine cone images. Try to look closely a little bit at what I'm showing on the right hand side. Even the Buddha with his head, it's got that pine cone figure. A lot of these pictures are from the Vatican. It's a pine cone. A lot of times on the hieroglyphics down at the bottom, you will see, and that of course we know is basically Nimrod, is this bird. There's a lot of these things it's not really a bird. He's being coded in the animal kingdom with a bird holding a pine cone. He is a species that is reproducing this way, gymnosperm. So what you have here basically is the Nakash was one system, Eve was another system. They came together. We had a first hybrid, all this kind of thing. But be that as it may, the Torah is constantly keeping the thread of this concept through the language of how it uses plants in the plant kingdom. Okay, so when it talks about scattered seed, grasses, brambles, thickets, thorns, weeds, okay, that are all going to be, fit for the fire, it's tumbleweed, or it's worthless seed, done up, all these negativities, it is totally talking about the seed of the serpent, the seed of the other side. And it's always symbolically with symbolized and equated with a pine cone. And because there is a law of correspondence, and whether we believe it or understand it, but it's built into our Torah, as above, so below. This is why have no idols in your home, in your mind, because it attracts. There is this magnetic thing going on, okay? So to have a whole holiday, I don't care how innocent and pure you are. And I was that way for 40 years. I never thought I was worshiping my Christmas tree, even though it bordered a little bit because of the ambiance. And there's things to love about it. I'm just sorry. We have to be honest how emotionally you can get emotionally dependent on some of these things, okay? But the point is, you cannot not see and not acknowledge there is an absolute biblical coding to a pine cone, to an evergreen, to a spruce tree, to bringing it into your home, to decorating it, and to on the winter solstice. This is no way is this the babe who is wrapped, represents the tree, the babe that is wrapped in a manger and put in a manger in a Levitical, in a field with Levitical shepherds watching it, okay? And that seed, okay, which is even so interesting, actually going to the whole concept of the nativity, but that you can't equate it with the other side. Okay, so these are the keys. I'm going to say, if we've lost it, we're just celebrating a holiday that is now in the concept of replacement theology, and to why would you want to resurface it, especially in this holiday, and confuse to me the sheep because of an issue of just, again, bad mitos, yes. Nobody's going to argue with that. We have to learn how to get through some of this dense information and how to find the balance for ourselves. Ultimately, we're responsible, for me in my house, how are we going to do it? Then there's how we do it in community with those around us, how we do it in our larger witness to the world. We're all on a process of coming home. I am totally weaning myself off of Christmas. I will not try to justify, but I will in no way, shape, or form condemn, only try to educate people how deeply, Ephraim, we have to go back to the really deep, soul level understandings in these festivals, in these feasts, and in these Babylonian things that are going on around us in order to have true discernment. So, either way, that's all I got to say on Christmas. I didn't want to get into this, but I do want to, I do want to put in another plug just real quick, because I do have this channel now where I do a lot of these much deeper sods. And you can link it on my website here. You can find it, theelectlife.org, and find the link tree. And there's a lot of information that just never makes it into these quote unquote this YouTube platform. So if you're interested in more, just check it out. So on that note, shalom, shalom, and I will see you in the next video.